Hi, everybody. John Russell, professional, internationally known psychic, paranormal investigator, and published author here. It's been a little while since I've seen y'all, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to carve out a few minutes and do a new YouTube presentation here. The theme is platitudes, and I'm starting with gardening. What does gardening have to do with platitudes? Well, we'll get there. I have been a an excellent gardener since I was a teenager. I could get anything to grow in any kind of soil and any kind of conditions, even where it wasn't supposed to, and so on and so forth. And that's a gift that has manifested into my old age. And I can nearly, of course, this is an exaggeration, obviously, but I can nearly stick a dead stick in the ground and get it to grow for me. I am just blessed with that green thumb. I can grow grass, lawns, trees, shrubs, plants, flowers, fruits, vegetables, anything and everything with amazing results, with astonishing results, and grow some of the best tasting food that you've ever tasted. And yes, I do talk to it. I communicate with it. I send it energy. It thrives on the energy I give it. And I have had some of the most wonderful food that I've grown because of that. So we're going to get there now, eventually. So hang on. Just remember that I am an excellent, fantastic, wonderful, blessed, gifted gardener, because that does play into it as we go along here. So platitudes. Oh man, we're all familiar with them. Fools rush in, but he who hesitates is lost. So we always have all these dichotomies to deal with. I think the worst one, the most hated one for me, the most useless and evil platitude is the one that we state when someone tells us something like this. You may not believe this, but a UFO came down and abducted my husband, and I haven't seen him since. The 2-year-old fell off the swings and broke his arm. The car has 4 flat tires, and it looks like the engine all of a sudden may be blown. And I'm told my mother has some dread, horrific disease and has 2 weeks to live. And I'm left alone to take care of our children, and no husband, and nobody believes me when I say he's abducted, and I can't get any help to fix the car. I don't know what I'm going to do, and the hospital's demanding bills to pay for the baby's arm. And what do we do? Especially if we're a preacher. I hate preachers. I am one. I'm a legitimately ordained minister and was an associate pastor of a small church for a while. I hate all ministers, hate all preachers, hate religion. So what is our usual standard response? Well, you know, God in his infinite wisdom, he knows. We just have to learn to trust God. God never gives us more than we can stand or more than we can bear. We don't know the ways and the minds of God. Oh my God, what bullshit. What arrogant, horrific bullshit. Mercy God. We might as well take a fork and gouge someone's eyes out and say, look, see what good I did you? Good grief. Anyways, that's one of the worst platitudes, the most hated platitude I know of. Well, we just have to believe in God's will. God's ways are higher than ours. His understanding surpasses. Oh, bullshit. Give me a friggin' break, people. So, platitudes. Here's a platitude that may have held you back in your life. Bloom where you're planted. Bloom where you're planted. Well, I'm not rich, and I don't have this, and I don't have that, and I can't get here, and I can't get there. That's okay. Bloom where you're planted. Lord God Almighty. If you can't bloom where you're planted, rip those roots up and get the hell out of there. And here's where the gardening comes in. Like I said, I've been a gardener since I was a teenager, and I'm experienced in growing anything and everything. So when we lived in New York, I grew roses in abundance. We had just incredibly beautiful garden of roses in our front yard. And I became to be known as the Rose Man. So whenever we would tell somebody where we lived, if they didn't recognize the address from any other description, I'd go, the house with all the roses in front. Oh, the Rose Man, you're the Rose Man. So I had, now you have to understand the front yard, I had amended all the soil exactly the same. It was all watered and fertilized exactly the same. All the roses were treated and fed and sprayed exactly the same. And all of them got the exact same amount of water, the exact same amount of nutrition, the exact same amount of sunlight. So this one rose, it was newly planted, just a little small rose, and it began to die. And I couldn't figure it out because it had the exact same care as all the other roses, but it was dying. And I couldn't figure it out. And I did everything I could, and it was just, regardless of all my efforts, it was dying. So I went and bought another rose to replace it. So I dug it up, and I put the new rose, in the exact same spot as the old rose, and dug it in, did everything to it that I did to the other one. And I had this thought. I was going to throw the old dying rose away. And I had a spot open in the bed. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to move it. I'm going to move it over to another corner of the yard. It was like, I don't know, 10, 15 feet away was all. I said, I'm going to move it over there, and let's see what happens. So I took the dying rose, moved it over to this other spot in the yard, planted it. Guess what? The dying rose couldn't bloom where it was planted. It had to have another spot. And when it was in that spot, it began to recover, and it began to thrive, and it began to grow, and it began to get large, and it became huge and produced some of the most beautiful roses you'd ever seen. But it wouldn't have if I hadn't put it in another spot. It couldn't bloom where it was planted. Well, what about the new one that I put in the spot where the old rose was dying? It thrived, grew like crazy, did okay. So sometimes you can't bloom where you're planted. You got to get up and get the hell out of there and get to a better spot for you. Okay? That's the lesson there. And it works in fruits too. I love to grow tomatoes and I love to grow peppers. And I had this one tomato bush. When you first start watering tomatoes, you can just water them willy-nilly because when you first plant them, they just drink and drink and drink and drink. And then they'll all plateau off and you get your water meter. And you check each tomato plant individually because each plant will drink water at a different rate. So if you just keep watering them willy-nilly, you're going to overwater and kill some, and you're going to underwater others. So I got them to the point that they were ready for the moisture meter, and this one tomato wouldn't drink. It wouldn't grow. Wasn't dying, it just wouldn't drink any water, and it wouldn't grow. Every time I went to check it, same amount of water, same reading. The other tomatoes were all growing, all drinking water at varying rates, and I kept them watered and fed and went back to this little fellow, and nope, the same amount of water every time. Wouldn't drink water, wasn't dying, just wouldn't drink water, wouldn't absorb water, and wouldn't grow. So remembering the rose, I took it and moved it to another spot, 10 feet away. Voila, began to drink water. The next time I went and checked it with a meter, it was dry. And watered it and kept an eye on it, kept checking it with the meter. It continued to drink, all of a sudden started to grow, started to thrive, just from moving it 10 feet away. And again, it got the exact same treatment as all the other tomatoes, but moving it 10 feet away, that was the trick. And this little tomato plant grew and developed some of the most ripe, biggest, prettiest, juiciest, sweetest tomatoes you've ever tasted in your life. Tasted better than the other tomatoes that had been okay from the get-go. So look, folks, sometimes you can't bloom where you're planted. Sometimes the conditions aren't right for you to bloom and to thrive and to exercise the gifts that you've been given. You may need to move across the street. You may need to move across town. You may need to move across the country. You may need to move around the world. So if you find that you can't bloom where you're planted, get the hell up and get out of there and go where you can. Okay? Ignore the platitudes and let yourself thrive. Let yourself be somewhere where you can do some good. Okay? So that's what I have to tell you today, and I hope that's been some encouragement to you. I'm John Russell. Please hit the subscribe button. Visit my site when you can, johnrussell.net. Got a couple of books out that I know you'll enjoy reading. You can find out more information about those at writingwithghosts.net and aknockintheattic.net. And I pray God's richest blessings on you, keep you in health, prosper you, enable you to get to the place where you can bloom and thrive and be happy in your life. And I wish you the greatest blessings, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.